Hi, everyone. I hope you all are feeling good and staying healthy. I am still trying to get over this influenza, but I did get back to work this past week, and so I am feeling a lot better than I was 1 week ago. So I hope you all are staying healthy as well and doing well. So this week we talked about auditions and casting and some other thoughts about rehearsals and scheduling, which I thought it was very interesting and very liberating for me to read about scheduling rehearsals. Um, but to talk about casting, to talk about auditions, I would say that what I learned was that it's really important to prepare heavily before auditions. There's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind before you have that actual audition. You should have your book that includes all your research, includes detailed focus on the different roles that are going to be incorporated in your production. And then the other thing to prepare for is to have information sessions and um, have plenty of scripts to hand out. Pick your parts that you want students to audition with, and then provide information as to when the audition is and how the audition is going to play out, whether that be a closed one or an open one. So all of these are very important things to keep in mind when auditioning. When I look back at the Christmas musical that I directed last year, I didn't have any part to do with the casting. Um, I directed a musical last spring, and that had the whole process of getting to know the script, analyzing it, getting to know the roles, having information session, and then having an open audition. And it was to check vocal abilities because it was a musical. And then from there, breaking it down and picking out students for callbacks. And then that was a closed audition, and we recorded it and everything so that we could look back and really see which student is going to embrace best each role. So that process was great. I think it was a fair process. I think we really scrutinized the script, scrutinized the needs, and really kind of fairly distributed the information and we're very cautious of how we approached the news with the cast, the final cast was going to be. And I really appreciated being a part of that process. However, the Christmas play was completely different. The principal had wrote the play, and he wrote the play with particular students in mind. And so therefore, there was no auditions and I had absolutely no control over which students in my theater elective class were picked for specific roles. So basically, the only thing that I was tasked to do in the casting, there were no auditions, by the way. So the only thing I was tasked to do in light of casting was giving the news and handing out the scripts to my students and saying, this is your role, this is your role, and so on. And so I personally had an issue with that. I really find it important to have auditions and give everyone a fair shot. And this was so different than our process in the spring. And so it was kind of a little disheartening for the students specifically because I had new theaters. Some of them were new theater students. This is their first time experiencing drama. And they were kind of robbed of that experience of being able to have that script in hand and analyze the different roles they might be interested in, and then go on audition and experience. Forgive me for the barking dogs. Um, they didn't get to experience that whole process of auditions and casting. And so um, my recommendation for future productions will always be to incorporate that in the process, even if you have an idea of who you want to cast for a specific role. I think it's fair, it's just, it's important for the learning process for the students specifically to be a part of that and know that, you know, they're brave and they're ready to dive in and they're ready to audition. I mean, it was this in spring when we had our auditions. I was just so amazed how these middle schoolers were so brave to step up to the plate during auditions, an open audition, and stand on that stage and sing in front of their peers. I was blown away. I was so blown away. And so, what a beautiful process for them to learn how brave they can be, and just to see that whole process, you know, come to life. And so that would be one thing that I will always recommend in the future, is to make sure that that's included in your school's process. Typecasting is just my last thing I would like to talk about. In terms of casting, one of the roles of the Christmas musical was that of an artist, like an avant-garde artist. And so the playwright had casted, and he admitted this is typecasting. He wrote that role. I mean, had somebody in mind. And while in the book it's discussed that that's kind of surface level and kind of a shallow way of casting. And I would agree, because somebody might surprise you even if you didn't have that person in mind, and give everyone a fair shot. But in this particular case, it was a beautiful decision. She happened to be kind of the dark horse. We had a couple main cast that we knew they would just shine and everything, but she just completely, from the beginning stages, she was shy, she was kind of timid and not really getting out of her shell yet. As time went on, she just embraced that role. She became the artist. Once she knew what her costume was going to be, she would show up to school in the morning in something similar. And so I would see her out, you know, in the yard, and I could see her owning that role and really, really coming forth as that character. She embraced that character all those weeks, and she was the one that was the most devastated after the show was over. And I could relate to that. Being a ballet dancer, I started plays when I was 5 years old, and I just remember the devastation after it was all over. And so I had a conversation with her and the whole class about the post-production depression that you can experience, and she really did embrace that role. And so she really was devastated when she had to let her go, basically. So those are just some of my takeaways this week, and it's helped me reflect on things. One thing I do want to share, even though we are focusing on auditions and casting, and this will be my last point, my PS to this is that definitely, that was my son. I loved the chapter on scheduling. It was liberating for me, because I left the execution of the Christmas musical with kind of a heavy heart, because we didn't have enough time for rehearsing, and we did our very best, and the kids showed up. They did great. But I did have some frustrations about the scheduling issues, and it was just very, very liberating to read that chapter knowing that we really need to be in depth of how we schedule our rehearsals, and to know just how much time we really need, especially if we're incorporating a live band and dance and song and all of that. So go easy on yourself, and know that you probably your gut is probably accurate, and all you can do is do your best and to not be too hard on yourself. So thank you, and I shall see you again next week. Goodbye.